Hello and welcome back to Today I Found This Interesting, the podcast where we talk about the things that are taking up my headspace every week, and it's usually multiple things, hence multiple episodes a week. Today's topic is something that has been stuck in my head since I went to watch the movie in theaters, and that is Obsession. Obsession is an incredibly well done film. I think I could throw out like general praises right at the beginning, which is the cinematography, the story itself, which we were going to delve very much into today. The acting, like standing ovation for the actors, and so much more. I insert the art director being upset here because I mean I get why she's upset, but it's also some of those things that you do have to negotiate prior to the filming. So it's kind of just a tragic situation on all ends, but yeah. But today we actually have notes for this episode of the podcast, so I'm so excited. And the music's off, so I can add my own soundtrack in the background going forward with this podcast, so I'm very excited to put my own music over top of this. Also, on top of all that, before we begin, this episode will contain images from the film where I feel they are relevant. I'll still explain them if you don't want to look at the screen, but they are there if you want a visual example of what I'm speaking about. Give me a fishing rod. Today is a fishing episode, so we have a lot of time to talk. Okay, with that being said, let's begin. So, if you haven't seen Obsession, it's about this guy named Bear who gets a thing called a one wish willow and wishes for this character, Nikki Freeman, to love him and only him, or love him more than anyone in the fucking world, as he quotes in the film. So, yeah. It gets pretty heavy. It's about the loss of bodily autonomy, and it's really good. Haven't seen it, I recommend watching it first before coming back here if you want to come back, because it is so worth a watch without any information on it beside that basic plot synopsis. But I actually want to talk about what the film has become rather than what the film initially was. So, starting off, I consider this film to very much be a feminist film. Now, why I consider that? We're going to go through that today. But to start off, I want to talk about the character Bear, who is our main character, and looking at it from an objective standpoint, the antagonist of the film. Bear's wish is what starts off the whole horror element of the film, because this film is a horror film. So, naturally, we need to talk about Bear as a character. I'm going to mention the original script in some points and parts that I know were different in the original script. So, the film itself starts with Bear having this little scene basically practicing confessing his love to Nikki, because he has a crush on her, obviously, hence the wish. But, in the original script, and I think this is very important to understand the type of character Bear is, it opens up with something that comes on a little bit later, which is his cat being dead because he left his pills out for the cat to get. Which it pops up in the film, but we open up with it being the case that happens, and how he's just watching TV while the cat's just laying dead on the floor, neglected. Which I think is such a good representation of who Bear is as a character, because he is a nice guy. If you don't know what a nice guy is, it is typically guys who use kind gestures at a surface level to get romantic favors. I guess that's the best way to put it. So, Bear throughout this film is represented as this typical nice guy, but not typical. There's obviously elements of it that aren't really too much a nice guy, but Bear, when you look at his character overall, is you can portray him and see him as the nice guy archetype. With Nikki Freeman, he offers in the film to drop her off, and he goes to get something for her when she drops her necklace. And these actions, while we can perceive them as kind actions on initial viewing, looking back on them, they're really more to win her favor romantically, because according to some lines from the film, Ian, one of the characters in the film, says something along a 7-year late proposal. So Bear has had this crush for a long time, if that's the case. Oh, level 1 fishing. So, if we look at it like that, a lot of that kindness to Nikki is typically to win romantic favor, especially how he acts towards another character, Sarah. Within this film, Sarah is the girl who was crushing on Bear. But starting off the film, isn't really being too kind to Sarah. He's being like normal enough, but he's not doing the extra actions that he's doing for Nikki. He is being himself, his normal self with Sarah. And then later on in the film, after he gets with Nikki through the One Wish Willow, he starts acting more romantic towards her when the relationship with Nikki starts going south because of the supernatural elements of the film. And it's not supernatural, I need to make that very clear. I just call it supernatural because it's the easiest way to explain what happened to Nikki, but really it's more a compulsion than anything else from what I know. So, that action itself is he made this whole wish on Nikki to make her love him more than anyone in the world, and then starts going romantically after someone else. Horrible action on Bear's part, but it also shows that his actions towards someone when he's being nice to them are for romantic favors, which is why we can see him as a nice guy. And then later on in the film, he says, like, there's a scene where Nikki asks for Bear to kill her because she's possessed and she just doesn't want to live like this anymore. And he says, quote, "What's so wrong with being with me?" So, yeah, Bear is the antagonist of this film, and I guess we'll go on to the ending now. I got my notes here, so let's talk about the ending, because in the ending, I think it very much shows how this film became very feminist in my mind, because the ending of this film, and spoilers for the ending, I've given quite a few spoilers already, but the major spoilers, this is the stuff that I would not want to spoil myself going into this movie. At the end of the film, Nikki in this state ends up killing 2 people. And the only way to end a wish is to die, because it's tied to the person who made it. So, after Nikki flips on him again, because she flips constantly to real Nikki and wish Nikki, when she flips to real Nikki and then he's hiding in the bathroom, he decides to get rid of his wish, if you get what I'm saying. And then swallows a bunch of pills. In the original script, he doesn't attempt to purge these pills, and then Nikki makes a wish, and then he can't get rid of these pills anyways, even if he tried, and then he dies, bringing Nikki back, and then Nikki ends up taking a gun, and we can infer what she's going to do from there. That's not how it ends in the film. In the film, Bear attempts to purge these pills, which again just shows how much of a pathetic character he is, because he decides to do this thing which is initially perceived as noble, but it's actually for himself too. Back to the whole nice guy archetype again. And then the wish happens before he can do it, before he can purge the pills. And then the same thing happens, he dies, and then Nikki comes back, but instead of Nikki doing the thing with the gun, she instead cries. She cries looking at all the chaos that's happened, all 3 dead bodies, because every one of her friends are now dead. And she cries as the credits roll. And I think that is such a potent ending, and it's one of the reasons why I've loved this film so much beyond seeing it the first time. I've watched it 3 times now. I did not watch it a 4th time between episodes, as I promised. I apologize. And that ending is so potent because she's left to deal with the consequences of Bear's actions. And I think that is such a strong standpoint to leave the film on, because the original script was going to be how the film was going to come out, but the actor for Bear said, let's have Bear purge the pills. And then the actor for Nikki said, let's have Nikki not do what she was going to do in the original script, and did instead what was in the film. And both, I think, got 1 take, if I recall correctly, and they pulled it off because that is what's in the film. And it is such a stronger message for it, because she's left to deal with the actions of Bear. Once again, I'm saying that because I need to talk about general reception of this movie, because I need to talk about my personal experience with watching this film. So, when watching this film, I went to watch it at 6 p.m. 3 weeks after it came out, because I wanted to watch it, I just never got around to it. But my theatre was primarily made of teenagers. Now, if you can't tell, I'm not a teenager. I'm not, like, I mean, I technically am. I'm on, like, the cusp of young adulthood. But also, like, age-wise, I'm not fully there yet. But I'm probably still a teenager a little bit. So, I had a lot of teen boys in my showing. To the point that I was very angry leaving my theatre because of the amount of laughing at scenes where it was not appropriate, and the amount of jokes they made during the movie. And I think that this film, if this film had the audience for it, I don't think it would be as feminist as it is with what it's showing during its release. Because the amount of women who are going into this film that I've seen come out saying it was scary, some had to walk out, and then watch these teenage boys and hearing that these teenage boys, from other people's perspectives and experiences, are just laughing. They're laughing at the movie, finding it funny. Even though it's not a funny movie, it's made by a comedy writer, and I do think that some of these elements can be a shock factor that you can laugh at. I think that when Nikki frowns in the movie, for example, that's a pretty funny reaction, but you also go, oh no, because yeah, something bad's gonna happen because of it. But teenage boys, they'll laugh at that, and they won't have that dread of what she's going to do because they don't see the problem with this movie as much. And I think that really shows that even now in such a progressive society, we very much still have a lot of biases we need to push past before we can really say we've progressed. Because if people look at Obsession and go, wow, she was bad, or wow, that was a funny movie, then they're part of the problem. Because ultimately, this film is about the loss of bodily autonomy by a man who then plays himself as the victim of her pain. And if they don't get that, I think that we do have a problem still. And honestly, a theatre employee literally came in and told them to be quiet or they're going to get kicked out. 3 groups of them. So when I say that I had people in my theatre who did not understand the concept of being quiet, and probably the concept of the movie because of that, I mean it. Now, I do want to talk about the plot a little bit. I know I've rambled on about the movie's feminist theme and how it showcases our society a little bit, given the reactions that people have had to it. Because I feel like I don't want to just ramble on about oh, this is such an amazing feminist film made by a man. Because obviously there's more input in it than just that. If I title it the title, a feminist film made by a man, or I say written, because that's what it is. It was written by a man, but it was shaped and formed through a whole team of people who probably had a lot of input in it, which is the best thing about filmmaking. I love filmmaking for that. I want to talk about some of the plot, because something that I noticed that I think a lot of people are talking about after watching this film is that Nikki was the only good person in this movie. And I'm going to flip between film and movie because I don't care enough to stick to one. Because Bear is obvious. He took away her bodily autonomy. He was selfish the whole way through, and he tried to cheat on her even after making the wish. So we know, but there's 2 other characters aside from Nikki and Bear, which is Ian and Sarah, who I have mentioned, but Ian is Bear's best friend, and it's revealed later to him having hooked up with Nikki on and off for 2 years. But he didn't tell Bear, who had the obvious crush on her, and his best friend. So if he'd known that, yes, he would have been a bit angry, but maybe he would have gotten over the crush because she clearly was not into him, she was into someone else, which could have prevented the events of the film. And the fact that Ian is hiding that from Bear is a little bit of a bad thing to do. Let's be fully real here. Obviously, if you keep that sort of stuff private, it's your choice, but if your friend's clearly crushing and you choose for a long time, longer than the time you started hooking up, and you choose to do it anyways, it's kind of a bad thing to do. And Sarah, she was very much as implicit in the cheating as Bear was, because she was the one who kept pushing Bear and kept doing these flirtatious actions after he entered the relationship with Nikki, not knowing that she was under the effects of a wish. And the car scene especially, if Nikki had not interrupted in that car scene, and if you see in the film, it's such an amazing scene, then they would have kissed, and she was the one pushing for it. Yes, Sarah had a crush on Bear for a while beforehand. I do understand that, but also, if you see your friend enter a relationship with someone and then start trying to get their man to cheat, it reflects poorly on you a little bit. But obviously, we can also throw in the perspective that Sarah had confided in Nikki about this crush, and that she told her, and that Nikki said, oh yeah, I only see him as a younger brother. And then she goes on to date him after being told that her best friend had a crush on him. Yes, I can see the perspective that Nikki would look in the wrong from an outside perspective. But having the perspective that we do, we understand it's not actually Nikki who's in a relationship with Bear, it's Wish Nikki. So I understand why she would be upset, but I do not condone cheating, which is what Sarah was pushing to do, even if, she didn't do it. What was my point? On top of that, Sarah was also constantly... We can get one more fish. On top of that, Sarah was also constantly talking down Nikki as a person to Bear, which does give me pick-me behavior vibes from her. And look, I love Sarah, okay? She is... I don't know what word to use that's appropriate, but she's so cool. And in the end, I do feel bad that she died. It's obviously a tragedy that this innocent person, or mostly innocent person, died because of the actions of Bear, and that's the whole point, is that it's Bear's actions that leads to all these negative consequences, and yet he puts himself in the victim spot. But also, Sarah wasn't entirely innocent and was kind of a bad person towards Nikki. Ultimately, Nikki was the only true innocent person in the movie, and everyone around her was setting up to fail for her. And the thing is, Sarah also knew about Ian hooking up with Nikki, and yet didn't tell Bear, but we can put that as a plausible deniability of the fact that she might not have known that Bear liked Nikki until after. We could, but also she knew, and she could have told, and she didn't. So everyone around her in her life was kind of out to get her in some way, and Bear obviously did the most damage, but everyone impacted Nikki's life in some negative way because of their actions. With that being said, that's kind of my basic thoughts on Obsession. That's obviously not the most fleshed out ones. Any discussion, any discourse, let me know. I would love to have discussions about this film because it is so good, and I do want to watch it another time, and I watch it a lot. It's like Hunger Games or Twilight for me. It's something that I deeply adore, and I will go back to constantly because it's such a powerful movie. It's such a powerful movie, and I think, what's his name? Curry Baker? Yeah, Curry Baker is the director. It's a standing ovation to Curry Baker. And Indy Navarrete? I can't pronounce her last name, I apologize. Standing ovation for her performance as Nikki, and Michael Johnston, so good in Bear too. Standing ovation, and like literally everyone in the cast, they did so well, especially with the budget. They have well earned the 500 times their budget they got back on the movie. It is incredibly well earned. I'm legitimately so happy they did well because it is an incredible film. It is an incredible film. And how much money did we make? Fishing level 1, level 2. Oh, didn't get level 3, but that's okay. How much did we make? Oh, we can go get our rod tomorrow. I'm so excited to get our rod tomorrow. Tomorrow we get our fiberglass rod. Let's do some catfishing. And whatever topic comes up next time, I don't know what it is yet, so it'll be a surprise. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll chat to you later.